How did religious tolerance in colonial New York and New Amsterdam lead to separation of church and state? The separation of church and state is not something we bat an eye about on a day-to-day basis, but how do we really define separation of church and state, and what led to it? Some would say that the original point was not to remove religion from the government, but to avoid potential political conflict as we had seen in the past, such as the Crusades. However, in this podcast, we will be using the definition that the separation of church and state was to keep religion out of the government in order to avoid clashing beliefs, as the United States of America is a free country with religious freedom. New Amsterdam, the 17th century Dutch West India Company colony, now present-day New York City, takes a distinctive place in U.S. history. Historians have long considered the Dutch colonial experience as the blueprint for the emergence of cultures of diversity and competition in modern-day American political and religious development. The reason New Netherland had such a progressive tolerance for religion at the time was because of its Dutch roots. Dutch toleration was not a clearly enunciated policy. However, the Dutch Reformed Church was only embraced by a minority of their population, which avoided forcing the heterodox to attend its services and pay for its upkeep. The Dutch population was also made up of Protestants, Catholics, and Jews, which is why the phrase liberty of conscience became a Dutch reality. The Dutch origins of religious tolerance translated into the colony of New Amsterdam. Colonel Peter Stuyvesant had much more conservative and almost obsolete ideas and legislation regarding religious tolerance, in lieu of his Dutch roots. As a result, because of the undeniably diverse population of the colony, many religious groups protested these legislations. By the 1650s, New Amsterdam was home to many religious refugees and seekers: Lutherans, Mennonites, Jews, English Baptists, Muslims, Quakers, and Catholics. The fact that each of these groups had to struggle with the colony's on-site director, Colonel Stuyvesant, in order to secure concessions has been central to the historical narrative of religious freedom in the United States. The Flushing Remonstrance is considered one of the earliest arguments for religious freedom in America, dating back to 1657. It was a petition made against Colonel Stuyvesant's anti-Quaker measures demanding religious freedom. Today, the Flushing Remonstrance is regarded as the precursor to the U.S. Constitution's provision of freedom of religion on the Bill of Rights. Shearith Israel was the only Jewish congregation in New York City from 1654 until 1825. After coming to New Amsterdam, the small Jewish community found themselves unwanted by Stuyvesant and his clergymen, but they fought for their rights and won permission to remain. Stuyvesant and his administration found themselves on the wrong side of American history, destined to be the losers as the colony's religious dissenters planted the roots of American pluralism by taking advantage of the toleration in the Dutch climate that prevailed, despite Stuyvesant and the local Reformed clergymen. So, how does this all come back to separation of church and state? Based on the definition discussed earlier, had it not been for the prevalent, diverse community of colonial New Amsterdam, later becoming New York, the Founding Fathers, when discussing the making of this country, wouldn't have had the capability to think the way they were and to recognize that religious freedom was essential to the United States population.